Welcome to Health Hour, a session for you by Black doctors, hosted by the Caribbean and African Health Network. Ever sat in a doctor's office thinking, they just don't get it? Or search for health advice online, but you can't understand it? Felt unheard? You're not alone, and you found your solution with Health Hour. Every Saturday at 11 a.m., this is your space where Caribbean and African healthcare professionals speak about health with a focus on Black people. We tackle the topics that keep you up at night: mental health, chronic conditions, preventive care, sexual health, men's health, women's health, heart disease, and much more. All with the cultural context that matters, because our Black doctors understand the unique challenges we face. Here is what you can expect: real talk from doctors who look like you and get it, lived experience testimonies, practical advice, illness prevention and management tips, and a space of understanding without judgment. You also get to ask questions. Your questions drive the conversation. Health Hour, where community meets Black health expertise.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. On Saturday, the 13th of June, um, you'll have to forgive me. I'm feeling a bit viral, so my voice is going. It's not because I've been shouting at my kids or anything. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Aya Olatoye. Many things, but as a hobby, I'm a consultant in acute medicine, and I'm going to be your host today. I'm looking forward to this session for many reasons. I hope everybody's enjoying the sun. It's sunny where I am. Um, is it sunny where you are? Why don't you put it in the chat and let us know? And on a scale of 1 to 10, why don't you put in the chat what kind of day you're having? 10 being I've just won the lottery, and 1 being, oh, it's not been a great day. So we can see how everybody's doing. But like I said, I am really excited about today, for many reasons. I am so excited about Khan's Health Hour. I think it's really important for us to have these conversations. And when the person who is talking looks like you, it's easier to take on the information. But most importantly, the guest that we have today is somebody who is very special to me. So we have Dr. Danielle Monteil, and like I was saying to the people before the recording, I've known Dr. Danielle since she was a baby doctor, and she's now a registrar in hematology, about to become a consultant. I'm very proud of her. She's going to talk to us about hematology, and it's going to be a fantastic session. So if you have the time, text your friends, send the link to people, or send the WhatsApp link to people, and let everybody know, because we don't often get experts who are talking to us. So, Dr. Montiel, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you. Um, so I'm just going to start trying to share my screen. Um, I hope that everyone can see this okay. And thank you so much, Aya, for that kind introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here with you all today. Thank you in particular to Natasha and Sam from Khan for inviting me. I understand that tomorrow is National Blood Donor Day, so this is a really exciting time to talk about blood, and in particular today, as a hematologist, I'm going to be talking to you about blood transfusion, why it's important, and the kind of journey of blood from blood donors to patients, and some of the reasons that we need to have access to blood transfusions in the UK. So, as I was saying, I am a hematology doctor. Hematologists, we study blood, and this is one of the reasons that I'm going to be talking to you about this today. So, I think it's always good to start with the basics. and I'd like to tell you a little bit about what blood actually is today. I think probably most people recognize blood to be a liquid, and in particular, this fluid that delivers oxygen to tissues in the body. But actually, I often like to think about blood as being a living tissue, and that's because it's this really specialized collection of cells that are working together to serve this function of transporting nutrients and oxygen to our tissues, but then also transporting waste products away from those cells. And the average person has about 5 liters of blood in their body, so it makes up a good chunk of our total body weight. And our bone marrow is constantly producing new blood cells to replace old and damaged ones. Oops, we've gone back a bit. So when you actually think about the components of blood, it's important to be aware that you can kind of separate blood into its component parts, which is the cells themselves. So most of us recognize red blood cells. They're the ones that turn the blood red. They transport oxygen around the body, and they're actually quite large cells. They're quite heavy. So if you were to take a sample of blood and allow it to settle on a bench, or if you were to spin it, so centrifuge it in the lab, you would find that the red blood cells all sink to the bottom, and then this plasma, which is the fluid that our blood cells are suspended in, that floats to the top. And plasma is predominantly water, but it also contains lots of really vital, life critical compounds, including proteins, clotting factors, salts, enzymes. So it's also incredibly critical. And then we've got the plasma, we've got our red blood cells, but we've also got lots of other really critical components of blood, specifically our white blood cells and our platelets. And platelets are blood cells that are also produced by the bone marrow, which have a really important role in helping us to stop bleeding if we have an injury. So when that blood separates after being centrifuged, the red blood cells all go to the top, the plasma goes to the red blood cells go to the bottom, sorry, the plasma floats to the top, and then the buffy coat, which contains your white blood cells and your platelets, that's kind of sits in the middle. So it's important to know what the components of blood actually are, because then you can have a better understanding of why one blood donation can be used to help so many different people. So whole blood is collected from the donor, and then it's heavily processed in a blood processing laboratory and unit. So in the UK, we have the NHS Blood and Transplant Service, where our blood can be processed. They get separated into its component parts, and then those component parts can be further adapted to produce products that can be used to treat patients. So most people, when they think about a blood transfusion, they're actually thinking about red blood cells, which are commonly used to treat people who have anemia or who are bleeding. So for example, due to trauma or surgery. But actually that blood donation, it contained a lot more than just red blood cells at the outset. So the plasma and platelets, for example, can also be separated out, and they can be used for different indications. So people who are having cancer related treatment whereby their bone marrow has been suppressed by the effects of chemotherapy, they might require platelet transfusion, and they can receive a platelet transfusion that's been donated from a whole blood donation. And then also plasma can be used for lots of different indications, but generally speaking, plasma is used in the UK to replace clotting factors to patients who might be bleeding or who might need them. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about plasma-derived components in particular, because I think they're often overlooked, but actually plasma can be used to produce a huge number of additional products. One thing that is actually quite a precious resource and commodity at the minute in the UK is intravenous immunoglobulin. So that's basically when plasma, which also contains all of our antibodies, that product has been heavily processed again to kind of pull out all of the antibodies and combine them into a product that can then be administered to patients. And IVIG, or intravenous immunoglobulin, that's often used for people who have either low immune systems, where they don't produce enough antibodies for various reasons, or as part of a kind of immune treatment for people who have autoimmune conditions. We also can derive a product called anti-D immunoglobulin from plasma, and this is a product that is really useful and actually really critical in antenatal care, in particular for women who might be D negative, and so that stops them from developing antibodies which could attack their growing baby and cause a condition that's really quite serious called hemolytic disease of the newborn. Plasma can also be used to produce a compound called a human albumin solution. So that's when the albumin protein component of plasma is drawn out and kind of concentrated to just take the albumin protein from the plasma that's been donated. And then there are the clotting factors that can be pulled out of plasma as well. And so that produces compounds like cryoprecipitate or very specific plasma-derived factor replacement. So, although we think about blood transfusion specifically being red blood cell transfusions, actually a donation can be used to produce platelets, red blood cells, and plasma derived components. So we are incredibly lucky in the UK to have the NHS Blood and Transplant Service, and they do so much work to ensure that blood that patients receive in the UK is safe. And so this process of keeping our blood transfusions safe in the UK actually starts before a donor's even donated their blood. And actually, if you've ever gone to the donor centre or spoken to somebody that has, you might have been told that they take a really detailed health history from you to identify any potential risks which could potentially make your donation unsafe. So blood transfusion safety starts even before the donation occurs. And often the NHS Blood and Transplant Service will explain to people why they might not be eligible to donate at one time, but would certainly encourage you to come back when your perceived risk is reduced. So, for example, if you've recently traveled to a malaria zone, it might be that they ask you to wait several months before you proceed with donation. But generally speaking, it's not common for them to turn people who are completely otherwise fit and well away, because we do recognise that we need to maintain our donor pool in order to keep a diverse pool of blood available to meet our evolving patient needs in the UK. Every single donation undergoes mandatory testing. This is another way of keeping the donation safe. And so, for example, every unit is screened for very specific infectious diseases like HIV, hepatitis B, C, and E, as well as syphilis. And there's other mandatory testing that occurs to ensure, for example, that the unit hasn't been contaminated with bacteria in the processing, for example. So that's a key part of how the blood supply is kept safe. And then the actual processing, so generally speaking, for cellular components, so for example, red blood cell and platelet transfusions, the white blood cells are actually filtered out. They're removed from the donation as much as possible, because white blood cells can carry certain infections. So, for example, CMV, which is cytomegalovirus, which is a virus that can live in white blood cells. So that's one way of keeping the units extremely safe. And we also do test certain donations for CMV exposure, because there are certain people that we will actually only ever transfuse CMV negative units to. So the unit itself has actually been tested, and the donor has been tested to see if they've ever had exposure to that virus. So that's another way of reducing the risk of that viral infection being transmitted, for example. And then once the blood has been kind of separated into its components. It's stored under extremely strict temperature controls. If you've ever been into an NHS BT processing unit, you'll know that there are alarms going off 24/7, and there's a lot of kind of background surveillance that's occurring digitally to ensure that the fridges are kept at very specific temperatures, and that we know the time out of temperature at any given point, and the duration for which a unit might have been out of the fridge or out of a very specific temperature, a narrow temperature range window. So we've talked a lot about what different blood components can be produced from a donation. And I may have touched on this a little bit, but I think it's important to know that the reason that we put all of this work into producing blood components, and in particular having people donate blood so that we can derive red blood cells in particular, is because we have a population of people who really need them. So most people recognize that if you're in a road traffic accident, or you experience major trauma or undergo surgery, you might have significant bleeding. And as a result of that, you may require blood transfusion to support and keep you alive at that time in your life. As I've mentioned earlier, people undergoing chemotherapy for cancer, this can damage the bone marrow and stop it from producing its own blood cells. So because of that, patients who are having chemotherapy often do require some supportive transfusions, both red blood cells and platelets, in order to maintain them during that period. And then there are people who have chronic anemia, and we are going to talk a little bit more about two particular conditions which affect Black, African, and Caribbean people in particular, like sickle cell anemia and thalassemia. And these chronic anemias may require the use of red blood cell transfusion in particular in order for patients to stay healthy. So now we're going to talk a little bit about hemoglobin, which is a really, really important molecule. Hemoglobin is this protein inside our red blood cells that acts like an oxygen delivery service, essentially. So I liked this analogy of it being an oxygen magnet. Your red blood cells have loads of hemoglobin inside of them, and this hemoglobin, which is this oxygen magnet, it kind of sucks away all of the oxygen from the lungs when the red blood cells transit through the lungs, and then it gets released where the body needs it, into the tissues. And because hemoglobin is so important, if you have a disorder of hemoglobin, so for example, these conditions that I earlier mentioned, like sickle cell anemia and thalassemia, then you may not be able to oxygenate your body the way you need to. And I think now it's probably worth explaining a little bit more about what sickle cell anemia and thalassemia are. So sickle cell anemia occurs because a patient or person cannot produce normal hemoglobin because of abnormalities in the genes that they've inherited from their parents that help them to produce the building blocks of hemoglobin. And as a result of that, of these very specific genetic alterations that they've inherited, their hemoglobin has the capacity to precipitate or kind of solidify within the red blood cell. And it means that the red blood cells, they lose their characteristic donut shape. So most people will have this awareness of red blood cells looking like little donuts. And there's a picture on screen on kind of my left-hand side. You can see that some normal red blood cells where they're these nice little ring-shaped donuts. But on the right-hand side, because of the way the hemoglobin has precipitated within the red blood cell, the red blood cells lost that donut shape, and it's now become what we would call a sickle shape. And that's actually why sickle cell anemia is called sickle cell anemia, because of the characteristic shape that the red blood cells adopt due to this abnormal hemoglobin. And the problem with sickle cell anemia is that because of this abnormal shape of the red blood cells, or the sickling shape of the red blood cells, they're no longer as deformable and mobile. They can't move through tiny blood vessels in the body as well as they should do. And that means that they can get stuck, they can get lodged, and they can stop blood supply and therefore oxygen delivery to bits of the vessel beyond that blockage. And that can cause severe pain, but it can also cause damage to the organs that aren't getting enough oxygen. Thalassemia is a very different condition, but also leads to anemia. And with thalassemia, it's not that the hemoglobin is abnormal, it's just that there isn't enough of it. And so this means that the patient is making red blood cells, but those red blood cells don't contain enough hemoglobin. Therefore, there isn't enough oxygen going around. So the body keeps working harder and harder and harder to make more red blood cells to kind of compensate for that lack of oxygen that it's sensing in the body. And that essentially means that those areas of the bone marrow expand in order to make more red blood cells. And it means that the cortex, or the outside of the bone, can become extremely thin. So on my screen on the left-hand side, I've got what's meant to be a normal bit of bone and bone marrow. And you can see that on the right-hand side, the outside of the bone, that cortex, has thinned quite significantly because the bone marrow has had to expand so much in order to generate new red blood cells. If this is happening when the bones are growing, so for example, in developing children, it can lead to quite significant growth and skeletal abnormalities, and it can be quite deforming. So important at this point to talk about how sickle cell and thalassemia are inherited. And we're specifically talking about beta thalassemia because there are a few other types of thalassemia, but beta thalassemia is probably the most straightforward to talk about from an inheritance standpoint. So they're genetic conditions, and probably generally aware that you inherit half of your genes from mom and half of your genes from dad. And in order to have either sickle cell anemia or beta thalassemia, you have to have two abnormal copies of the same gene. So if both of your parents are carriers for these conditions, you have the chance of inheriting both of their abnormal genes, and that will mean that you are affected. So if two parents who are both carriers for one of these conditions have a child together, they have a 1 in 4 chance of having a child that has the condition. So we've talked a little bit about sickle cell anemia and thalassemia, and why these patients might have low oxygen levels in the blood, or their red blood cells can't oxygenate as well because of these abnormalities of the hemoglobin. So it might kind of follow on really easily from that, why they need red blood cells that have normal hemoglobin in order to help them deliver oxygen to their body properly. So I've mentioned that with the thalassemia patients, the severe anemia that they have can lead to these bony deformities. And also the body has other places where it can produce blood cells, not just the bone marrow. So your liver and spleen have the capacity to make red blood cells. And because of this kind of chronically low oxygen level that it keeps sensing in the body because it doesn't have enough hemoglobin, what you can end up having is the liver and spleen becoming really enlarged. But there's only so much space in your abdomen for these organs to kind of enlarge into, and this can become quite symptomatic for people. It can compress other organs in their abdomen. So for example, the stomach can mean that they can't eat as well. Can lead to quite poor growth and development. It can cause pain. And as I mentioned, you can also have quite significant bony deformities because of that cortical thinning of the outside of the bone, especially in developing children. So the way that people with thalassemia are managed is that we just give them blood transfusions in order to stop the body from sensing that oxygen deficit. So we're giving them healthy transfused cells, and in order to replace the abnormal ones that they have. In sickle cell anemia, not all patients will need red blood cell transfusions regularly. It really depends a little bit on how their sickle cell affects them, but it's not uncommon for a sickle cell patient who's having a severe pain crisis, or having significant complications of their sickle cell anemia to perhaps require the odd red blood cell transfusion in order to help them overcome the crisis that they're experiencing. And then, because of the fact that these sickle cells are blocking tiny blood vessels in the body, and the blood vessels that would normally supply blood and oxygen to the different organs, therefore isn't getting the blood and oxygen to important organs. You might end up with somebody who's having such significant complications of their sickle cell anemia that in order to try to recover some of that organ function, you put them on a transfusion program deliberately to try to allow a better oxygenation and recovery of those organs. So we've talked a little bit about sickle cell anemia and fatty thalassemia, and we talked about blood and what it's made up of, and its component parts. But now I'd like to talk a little bit more about red blood cells in particular. And a lot of people are already aware of different blood groups. So you could perhaps be a blood group A, B, or O person. And that's really to do with what markers your red blood cells express. So we talk about these markers. Actually, the scientific word for them is antigens, but I think the word marker is kind of is reasonably appropriate as well, as an alternative, and maybe a bit easier to get your head around. But your blood group A, if you express the A marker, your blood group B, if you express the B marker, you can be blood group A and B. And if you're blood group A and B, it means you've got both of them. And if you're blood group O, you don't express any of them. So the reason that this matters is because if you are a blood group A person, you really should only be receiving blood from people that have blood group these A markers on them, or have none of the markers. If you receive blood from somebody that has B markers, your body will recognize that immediately, and that can lead to a serious reaction, and even be quite fatal, because we all have antibodies in our body that are directed against the markers that we don't have to A and B. But actually, blood groups are a lot more complicated than A, B, and O. And actually, we've got lots of other additional markers, all these antigens, which is the scientific word for them. And because of that, it's really, really, really important when we're transfusing blood to patients to try to find the best match for them. So I really like this analogy of your surface markers, or surface antigen profile on your red blood cells as being like your barcode. I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. And in the UK, because we know that our patients that have hemoglobin disorders require blood transfusions not infrequently, we do a lot of work in order to try to match the blood that they need to them as best as possible. And we also ensure that we only, for example, give patients who have sickle cell anemia blood from people who are not carriers for sickle cell, because obviously when we're giving them blood, we're trying to reduce the amount of the abnormal hemoglobin in the blood. So it wouldn't make much sense to give them blood from a carrier, because that would have about 50% of this hemoglobin S. And then we try to give them fresh blood as best as possible, but that's not always feasible, but that is definitely what we aspire to achieve. And I've mentioned a little bit already about the fact that A, B, and O are really important blood groups because of this capacity for our body to produce antibodies, or the fact that we do have antibodies directed against A and B if we don't express those markers. We don't all have already established antibodies against the other blood groups, but you can make them. And this is the concept of alloimmunization, which is actually a bit of a long word, but the thing that I want to highlight is that it's the reason we make such an effort to match blood as best as possible for people who need it often, in order to um, ensure that we're reducing their chances of developing antibodies against other blood cells, which could then make it much more difficult for them to receive blood from in the future. And in particular, we know that patients who have sickle cell anemia often have this very specific surface marker barcode, which is RO. So unfortunately, we don't have as many donors in the UK with this RO blood. It tends to be much more common in Black, African, and Caribbean people. But you know, again, because of this need for matching blood as best as we possibly can, this is considered to be a really, really precious resource. So we do a lot of work already at matching the barcode of patients' red blood cells to the donor. But there is a move now to going even a bit beyond that. So, and actually matching people at a genetic level. And this is a really exciting bit of work that's actively happening at the minute. But in order to do, genetic matching, we still need to have that donor pool available to us that gives us the resources to deliver that perfectly matched blood to patients if we know what their genotype is. So I guess this kind of comes back to why we need a diverse donor pool. And in the UK, our demand is obviously a lot higher than the supply. In fact, I think it's sorry that is my dog barking in the background. So in the UK, only 1.6% of our current blood donors are of Black heritage, and that's probably about just under 13,000 of our regular regular blood donors, and considering we have about 800,000 regular donors, that's really probably so insufficient for what we need. So I'm not entirely sure why people don't donate blood. It might just be inconvenience or the fact that it's never really occurred to you. But there are some common myths that I'm hoping we can bust a little bit today. So one is it hurts too much, and I think it's probably worth just being very clear. It's a bit like having a blood test. You'll feel a little pinch when the needle goes in, but then after that, the donation is painless. Some people say it takes too long. The actual donation doesn't take very long at all. But the entire appointment, you might be there for about 45 minutes to an hour. That's partly because of the health screening that occurs at the very beginning. And then the donor care is a really important part of NHSBT's work. So they'll make sure that you're well after you've donated, and normally you're quite encouraged to have a snack and a drink. And then just to be clear that the average person has about 10 pints of blood, and donation is 1 pint, and you will make it back within a few months' time. And actually, your body will replenish the amount of fluid that you've lost within 24 hours. So I would definitely, if you're interested or you've considered being a blood donor before, but you haven't yet had the opportunity or motivation to go to the blood donor centre, I think it really is something that I would highly recommend. And it's really important for us to have enough blood in the UK to deliver the care that we need to patients, because if we don't, if we get to amber or red levels of our blood supply, then the hospitals have to start perhaps delaying non-urgent surgeries. And if we get to a point where we've what we consider to be red supply, so only 1 or 2 days of available blood in the country, then we have to save our blood for only life-saving emergencies and urgent care. So it's really important to have enough blood to supply the all of the services that are being run throughout healthcare on a national level all the time. So I hope I've inspired you maybe to think about being a blood donor if you aren't already. It's really easy. You just go online, register, and then they make it really easy to book an appointment. You can either call somebody or you can do it online. And then you go, you donate, and they treat you very nicely at the donor centre and give you a snack and a drink afterwards, as I said. So we've explored the vital nature of blood and its components, as well as some of the key conditions that it treats. And I've talked to you a little bit about risks like alloimmunization, which is when we make these antibodies directed against surface markers on some of the red blood cells. But we've got lots of protocols in place to ensure safety for our patients. And obviously, the journey just starts with one act, which is donating. So happy to take questions now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Monteil, for a really informative talk. Excuse me, giving us all the important points about donation, why it's important, what's involved, what is blood. All of that stuff is really, really important. So thank you so much for that. Before we go into questions, I would like to ask everybody um, if you have an objection to donating that Dr. Monteil hasn't addressed yet, please put it in the chat, and before we go, we'll try and deal with that. So if anyone has an objection to donation that hasn't been addressed by this talk, please put it in the chat, and then we'll get to it. So again, Dr. Monteil, thank you so much. There are a few questions. So the first question is there anything that stops me from donating? I take blood pressure tablets, so does that rule me out?
I don't think that taking blood pressure tablets would preclude you from donating, but donor care, as I said, is a really important component of what the NHS Blood and Transplant Service do. And so, generally speaking, they their website is really informative, and it will tell you if they think that any conditions that you have um would stop you from donating blood. There are a few things that do stop people. So one of which is if you've ever received a blood transfusion before, you're not allowed to donate. Having certain medical conditions, so for example, a history of cancer or be receiving chemotherapy, that would stop you from donating. And this is again just to keep the donor pool as safe as possible, but I don't think that having high blood pressure and taking blood pressure tablets should or would preclude you. But I would definitely recommend that you just have a little look on the NHSBT website, and it'll be very clear about what they would agree or
Yeah,
accept.
thank you. Another question here: does donating leave you weak or run down afterwards? Because I've got kids, I've got working kids, so what about that?
Yeah, so an excellent question, an excellent point. When you go to the donor center, they do a quick iron check. So you have a quick a prick, like a needle prick that checks the amount of iron that you have in your body, because we know that iron deficiency is one of the most common reasons that people might not recover as well after a blood donation. And and so you have to have adequate iron levels in order for you to be able to go ahead with the donation. Yes, you giving up a unit of blood probably will make you feel a little bit fatigued in the subsequent couple of days, but generally speaking, people have recovered within a few days.
Right.
And your body will recover the amount of red blood cells that you've made. They say about 3 months for men and 4 months for women. So you'll recover the loss within a few months, but the actual fluid that you've lost, you'll recover that within 24
24
hours.
hours.
But I can't say that you won't feel
Yeah,
fatigued at all. But most people have such joy from donating,
yeah,
especially because often NHSBT will tell you where your blood has been used. So you'll get a notification a week or so later saying your blood's been given to somebody in Birmingham, say, and that I think gives you a bit of a mood boost that's good enough
Yeah.
to recover from that.
And I think let's put it in context. You know, how many of us have spent an extra hour watching something on Netflix, that we shouldn't have watched, or for those people who drink alcohol, there's something and then the next day you feel a bit rubbish. I think, especially in the context of this is something that's really benefiting us and our community, is it worth the sacrifice, I suppose is the right word, of maybe it being a little challenging for a couple of days. Next question is, so you've mentioned this essentially, what aftercare is given. So you said there's drinks and biscuits, you know, after, but there's no need for follow up afterwards. You give your blood, and I'm sure there's a number you can call if there are any issues, or you could just come see your GP, I imagine. Um, Next question is leukemia. Um, is it inherited?
Generally speaking, no, we do not think about leukemia as being an inherited disorder. There are exceptions to that. There are inherited genetic conditions that make people more likely to develop leukemia, both at younger and older ages. But generally speaking, that's not the norm. And when I meet patients and who have a diagnosis of leukemia, I often just tell them this is really bad luck, which is true.
Okay. Um, there's a point here. My mum's generation didn't really do this. So how do we talk to my parents? How do I talk to my parents about why it matters?
So it depends on how old your parents are. There are age cutoffs for becoming a new donor. So ultimately, I can't remember exactly what they are off the top of my head, but again, this will be very clear on the NHS Blood and Transplant website. But I wouldn't usually suggest that elderly people who have had no interest previously in donating blood and who maybe are starting to develop other medical conditions go and donate a unit. But how to tell people or why to tell people it matters. Ultimately, we need blood to treat everyone in the UK. It's not just people who have conditions that I've talked to you about, like sickle cell anemia and thalassemia. Obviously, any of us could be in a road traffic accident today, tomorrow. There are women having babies all the time that experience significant bleeding. So it matters because, as I said, ultimately, in order to run our health service effectively, we have to have an adequate supply of blood to give people to do surgeries, trauma
Yeah.
surgery, but also cancer surgery, as well as elective surgery. So just having your gallbladder out. And ultimately, we're all patients in the NHS in the UK at the end of the day. So,
Hmm.
it's not just for people who have medical conditions who are unwell. It's for you, it's for me. It could be your mum, it could be your
Yeah,
brother, it could be anybody.
absolutely.
And that's why it's
Absolutely.
important to have adequate blood stores.
Yeah. I just had a quick check actually at 70 in terms of the age cutoff for transfusion. Sorry, donation. Um, and thank God for Khan who is doing presentation. Why don't you send him this video? you know why don't we share, because we're sharing cat videos all the time and videos of people falling over and gossip videos. Why don't we share things that are actually going to benefit our community? Because I think this is one of the points that's coming on that Dr. Monteil mentioned. um Black people have a higher representation. Was it row you talked about? So in terms of the pool, so we are 1.6% of the donating population. And what would happen if we, took this on, and even if you just thought, let me just help my black brothers and sisters. It will help other people, but what would happen if we were to take it seriously? I think it's really important. I get some of the concerns about what's happened before and things like that, and I do understand, but this is not a thing that we need to look at another community to help solve. This is something that we can take responsibility for, and we can start taking better care of ourselves. So I think it's really important for us to address whatever our concerns are and move forward with it. In terms of
You just never know. So I didn't talk at all about the frozen blood bank, but we're very lucky again in the UK to have the frozen blood bank, which actually is it's based in Liverpool. So essentially, what the frozen blood bank is that we've got our wet stocks. So those are the units that you think about as just being readily available to the population, if they're needed. But NHS Blood and Transplant, they're constantly looking at that barcode that's expressed on the red blood cells from the donors. And if they find things that are very unusual or very rare, they pull that unit out of the circulation, and then it gets siphoned off into what we call the frozen blood bank, where it gets frozen and cryopreserved. So it gets basically stored at much colder temperatures and frozen away, so that it can be available for somebody in the future who might have a very, very rare blood
mm,
group and need it. And so, as a hematology trainee, I've had the opportunity to go to the frozen blood bank, and I asked them. I said, "Okay, what are your favorite stories? Tell me, what stories have you got about the value of these units?" And so I was told, and I hope I've got this right. I'm sorry, some of the facts might not be 100%, but the premise was that there was a patient who was elderly and who had a fracture and needed orthopedic surgery. And she lived in a very remote part of the UK. I want to say one of the Scottish Islands. And she had an extremely rare blood group.
mm,
And there were no wet units available in the country for her. But there were 2 units that were available in the frozen blood bank. And those obviously were thawed, and they were sent to her, or to the hospital in Scotland where she was. But those units ended up actually being hers, that she had donated
wow,
30 years before. So you
wow.
just never
You
know.
don't know.
you,
Yeah.
you might be helping yourself.
You never know, but I think that one of the things that I we can talk about in terms, especially in the Caribbean African community, is that we are big on community, and we're big on helping ourselves. And this message is really important because this is a way, another way we can really, really help. Yes, let's do all the charitable works and all the NGO. Let's do all of that, but this is another way that we can really, really help because it will directly benefit us. So I asked people to talk about potential objections. One of the objections was myths about donating blood in our communities with regards to superstition. And I think it's really important. So, you grow up, depending on where you're from, you're hearing about blood sacrifices and witches and all, all these kinds of stuff. Now, I think it's important, and I talk about this when I'm at work talking to my resident doctor trainees. There's a difference between fear and risk, and we have to recognize that some of the things that we are using as objections, they're not real risks. So we have to be conscious that there might be a superstition or a fear that we have. What if they use it for blood sacrifice, or what if um, I don't know that there's any evidence of that happening with, the UK blood service. Because if we're going to have concerns about that, why not just have concerns about every other thing? I think that we have to be do your research or whatever, but I do think it's important for us to separate out. I'm scared of this, in terms of a fear or superstition, and where's the evidence that this is an actual risk? Because just like Dr. Monteil said, you could be, or somebody that you love could be the necessary beneficiary of that blood, and we don't want our superstitions to get in the way of that. There's a question here. Is it not restrictions as well? If you travel to Africa, you can't donate for a period of time.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So it's not just Africa. There are certain European countries, so Greece, Italy, or south of Italy, anywhere where you could potentially acquire mosquito-borne virus, or malaria, yellow fever, dengue. There'll be restrictions because ultimately those diseases might not manifest immediately. So
Hmm.
you as a donor might be completely well at the point of return, but then your blood donation has been affected by said infection. And often you have to remember that blood donations are generally going to extremely vulnerable recipients.
Mm.
Um, a lot of people who are having chemotherapy and are quite immune compromised by that. Or people who are really unwell in hospital. So the last thing that we want to do is cause them harm with essentially a treatment that they're being given. And that's
Mm.
one of the reasons that the donation has to be as safe as is possible.
Mm.
And as I said, that starts before you've even donated. You get screened extensively. So I've been turned away a couple of times because I was saying actually before we started recording that travel is the thing that often gets me. I grew up in the Caribbean. My family still live there. I go back to Trinidad. Well, I used to go back much more frequently than I do now, but that would often be the thing that would stop me from being able to donate. So it was almost something that I had to think about. I'd have to plan my donation before travel
Mm.
in order to be eligible. But I think even though it's frustrating as a donor because you've made the effort, you want to go,
Yeah.
you want to give blood, you want to do the right thing. This is altruistic. I mean, at the end of the day, there isn't really anything that you get back as a donor,
Mm.
other than just feeling like you've done something amazing, which you have. But you get some good vibes off it, but you don't get any other reward.
Mm.
And it is a bit of an inconvenience, possibly, making the effort to go to the donor center, going through the questionnaire, having sitting in a chair for an hour, whatever it is, or it won't be an hour, like 15 minutes, giving your blood, and then and that's like an hour of your day. So to make all of that effort only to be told, oh no, you're not allowed to donate today, it is frustrating.
Yeah.
But you have to understand why, and I think it's really just to keep that donation as safe as possible, so that the person at the end of the donation is safe.
Yeah. That's a great answer. I think this is probably going to be the last question. What is the safest frequency to donate blood?
So maximum you're allowed as a man, I think, is every 3 months, and as a woman, 4 months.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Monteil. This has been really, really informative, fun for me, and lots of information that people have got out of it. And I think, and then again, we have to thank Khan for putting on things like this. So doctors from our community, in our community, can tell us this is really important. And I would like to, I always ask everybody when I'm hosting, if there's one thing that you would encourage everybody to do, what would that one thing be?
As in me, what would
Yes,
I
yes, yes,
encourage?
yes.
Oh, I would certainly suggest going on the NHS Blood and Transplant website and having a look to check your eligibility. And if you're eligible, please just book an appointment to donate blood. And please let us know. When I say us, you can get in contact with me or just NHSBT in general, and tell them what you think the barriers are to getting people from kind of ethnic minority communities in the UK to donate blood. Because as I said, we have a huge population of people who need blood who might be from those communities, and actually we want to get the match as best as possible. But when we don't have the donor pool to provide that, it becomes a little tricky. So if you've got any suggestions for how we access certain communities or what barriers might be and how we address those, please get in touch
Yeah.
and let us know as well.
Sorry, I said there was a last question, but there's one last question. Are there any weight restrictions?
Ooh, I think yes, almost certainly. Um, it will be more to do with being under, I suspect.
Okay,
Um, but I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. As I say, the NHS Blood and Transplant website is full of information. So if that's something that you're keen to clarify, please just have a little look.
wonderful, wonderful. Another message for you. Thank you very much, Danielle. I reside in the Republic of Ireland and have experience in transfusion medicine as a clinical scientist. Currently, I'm working on pediatric hematology and oncology. There are cultural issues and various traditional beliefs that affect donors within the African and Afro descent communities. Thank you very much. It's a very important topic, and that's from Cynthia Dakura. So thank you so much
Well,
again.
thank you, Cynthia. Yeah,
And
I
it's
agree.
again, it's really important. Please, 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 everybody, send this video to everybody in your community. We need to have these conversations more and more. So again, thank you from me, thank you from Dr. Monteil. It's been a wonderful time, and we're going to hand over to John, who's going to close the session.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ayo. And it's been a very powerful session. Thank you so much, also, Dr. Danielle. Thank you very much. It's amazing to have you here with us and also to share this very important information. I think we've learned so much, and today, and also we've gotten more confident to go give that blood donor. And also, when you spoke about recovering um, the um, the liquid in 24 hours, that also gives a bit encouragement and confidence to do this. So thank you so much, yeah, Dr. Danny. Thank you very much. We would love to have you here again and again. And like Dr. Ayo said, it's something to push out to all your contacts. Let them get this video. Let them have this information. Let it spread in our community. We need this to be resounding as a bell all over our communities. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Danny. Thank you, our amazing host, as always, Dr. Ayo. You're always amazing. We want to say thank you for always giving our time to work with us in this agenda. And it's for the community. And yes, we know we're pushing, and we know this is going out there. I'm going to share my screen in just a minute to just take us through what we have in store and can for the events, things we look forward to happening in near future. Also, just to say again, this is the Health Hour. For everyone that's here for the first time, we do this every Saturday. It happens every Saturday from 11 to 12 p.m. And we'll be here again next week for another exciting time. Next week we're going to be looking around clavicle health for Black women, and it will be an amazing topic too. So please do your best. Please do help to share this information around. Um, um, just 1 minute. Yes, so next week we'll be having Dr. Natalie, who will be taking us through the topic smear screening. And as we know, she is a consultant and gynecologist. So this is one topic, one session not to miss. And we want to just stress it again and again. Please share this to your networks. Let everyone you know let them in on the health hour. We want to make this go viral. We want to make this go viral through our communities and let them get very involved. And to register, please do register from with the email info@can.org.uk, and we will be happy to get you connected. So it's happening same time, same place, Saturday the 20th of June, from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And next we have is this will be the most exciting thing happening this weekend, next weekend in Manchester, Greater Manchester. It is the Windrush Day celebration. It is the most exciting outdoor event that will be happening here in Manchester. So if you have, tell a family, tell a friend, tell everyone you know to let's make our way to the park. It's happening on the 20th of June at the Alexander Park. It will be happening from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. And we have loads of entertainment in store for us on the day. We have, for the children, you are well covered. We have the bouncer castle, we have games, we have the face painting, children corner. It will be an exciting time to come with your families and just have fun. And also, we're going to be having some very keynote speakers on the day to share some information to us on the day. We'll be having great music. Just to share with us, also, we're having 3 DJs on the day. Last year we had 1 DJ. This year we're having 3 DJs. So it's gonna be very entertaining, very fun day for us all. You could travel from Liverpool, travel from Leeds, from everywhere you are. Please make your way to the park. Also, we're gonna be having a football tournament, an under 13 football tournament on the day. So it's loaded. It's gonna be packed full, and we're having a special tent that will be dedicated to the elders. It will be our elders tent. It will be a special one this year dedicated to them. Also, we're having lymph that we're having the Moods Radio for the entertainment and the tent. So please do invite the elderly to come around. It's a day to celebrate the Caribbean heritage, and Windrush generation, what they've done to the community in the United Kingdom. Please do share this information and also scan the code to register. You could also email windrushday@can.org.uk to book a stall. We are still open for stores. Stores are still open, so please, it will be closing very soon. But please do hurry up if you want to show something, you want to showcase your business on the day. It's the best platform to showcase your business. So please book a stall. You can email us at windrushday@can.org.uk to book a stall. And up next, we have the Black Healthcare Awards. This is the most premium Black Healthcare Awards in the United Kingdom. We celebrate our Black healthcare professionals in the UK for what they do, and it's a spotlight event to showcase and recognize them for the efforts they do a lot in our communities, and we want to take this time to celebrate them and to show them that we see what they do, and we want to make this as loud as possible. It's going to be the best night of celebration for our Black healthcare professionals ever in the UK. So this is the third one on a roll. Last year was amazing. This year is going to be even better. It's happening on the 4th of July in London, and it will be a packed event. Please do kindly, take the barcode here is here for us to scan the barcode and get your tickets. Get your ticket. Tickets are selling very fast, I can tell you. So please do get a ticket for one, get a ticket for two, get a ticket for a table, and we'll be having an amazing time. It's going to be on the 4th of July, 2026 in London. Please do scan the barcode and get your tickets, and we'll see you on the day and celebrate with you. Thank you. Up next, we have the football tournament, which I did mention earlier. So this will be happening at the Windrush Day celebration in the park. Good news, we've gotten all the teams now all in. I want to thank the communication team for putting this out there, but we have all the teams all registered and we are good to go. It's going to be an amazing football tournament. You don't want to miss this one, I tell you. So it's going to be the under 13s, and all the teams are already all set for the tournament, and it's something not to miss. So I want to, it will be at the park, Alexander Park, on the 20th of June. So it will run from 12 to 3 p.m. and we're still going to have a trophy display on the day. It will be amazing. Just want to, I'm hoping to see you all there. And like I said, come with your families, come with one, come with all. Up next is an account. We have a very creative health service we run through the week. We just want to invite you all to join us to wherever you are in Bolton, in Stockport, in Gotham. In Bolton we meet every Wednesday. In Stockport, we meet every Tuesday, and in Gotham, we meet every Monday. So you come for fun, act, and new friendship. It's an amazing safe space, to display to display art, to have fun, and also to build friendship. So for more questions, please do contact Lola at Green and Arts Wellbeing at can.org.uk, or you could call on the number 077-899-75205, and also you can scan the barcode also to register. It's an amazing space for fun arts, and please don't try get involved. And if you are around the Bolton area, or Stockport, or Gotham, please do try and make time to get involved. So in Bolton, we'll meet every Wednesday, like I said, but it's from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and the venue, and it will meet at the St. Paul's Community Room. And at Stockport, the meeting is held from 1 p.m. So you can plan your time 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and it's at the North Redis Community Center. And at Gorton, we'll meet on Mondays at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. at the Gorton Library. Please make time and also scan the barcode to get more information, and also kindly email Lola at Green and Arts Wellbeing at can.org.uk to get more involved. And next, we have a very special running health powered event we're doing. It's the Black Red Ribbon Champions. It's an amazing project we're running in Cannes, and also please, if you want to get involved, contact us at BLK Red Ribbon at can.org.uk, or you can call us as 077 100 22382. As we know it's more on the HIV and also to get yourself tested. It's always a safe space, to get tested. And also we wanted you to please do email us, and we can follow up on this if you're interested. Thank you very much. And up next, we at Black and Can we have a very strong, very powerful Black-led counseling service, and we are also looking at for more people to join us in this service we do run. And please, if you're interested, if you want to refer yourself and or someone please do email us at counseling@can.org.uk. We'll be happy to get your mail, and we'll follow up. And we're trying to build more counselors in our community. It's like I said, we run a very strong Black-led counseling service. And please do email us, get in touch, and we will also follow suit along that. And that is that for the my sharing. And this is also to say thank you again for everyone for joining us this week's Health Hour. Next week, like we said, same time, same place. Please do invite somebody. We want to have our Black communities, well represented in this meetings, because we do learn a lot. We share a lot of information pertaining to our health as Blacks, in our community. So please, we're lovely, and we're hopeful to see you again here next week, same time, 11 to 12 p.m. And that is that for me. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
And that's our time for today. Whether you joined us on Zoom, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, thank you for making the Health Hour part of your Saturday. We hope today's session gave you the right dose of health wisdom that you can share with your friends and family. When we share knowledge, we strengthen our entire community. Mark your calendar. Next Saturday, same time. Got a topic in mind? We want to hear from you at health@can.org.uk. Health Hour, hosted by the Caribbean and African Health Network.